today I have Stacy Edgar with me. Stacy is a co-founder of Venture, an AI and digital health startup that works with employees to introduce a consumer-centric model of health insurance. Let's just take a quick turn back to like thinking about companies and leaders. What do you recommend in terms of thinking through impacting employees in healthcare?
I think I would encourage businesses to think about taking a broader definition of cost. So it might be tempting, for example, to maybe not fund a health plan generously or do the bare minimum or forego a wellness program. But then, the cost you're paying is on company culture. Which organization do you want to be at? The one that is, values health or the one that explicitly doesn't? And you kind of then have employees self-select in based off of that. So it's having a broader view of, on one hand, you may save money if you go to the bare minimum on a pure dollars and cents basis that you can see. But the flip side of it might be in the form of absenteeism. It might be in the form of productivity. It might be in the form of the type of worker that you end up hiring.
Somebody who has more options may go elsewhere.
Yes, exactly. So it starts with, what's the culture you want to set? Who do you want to be in the market? What do you want your team to look like? And then from there, it becomes actually quite simple on this is what I need to do too. And today, the reality is, whether we like it or not, being a good employer, being a competitive employer means you offer great benefits when it comes to healthcare.
Well,
and that you...
It's a way to show you care.
Yeah, 100%.
And, if people are, if the main mechanism in which people at least one of the main mechanisms in which people are feeling a sense of belonging is work, which that's what they do. People try to find a place where they feel like they fit because they got to show up there every day and work with everybody. Then you're really sending a contradictory signal back when you're saying, I don't care enough about you to be concerned about your health. And you got to think about whether or not you want to send that. I do think there are companies that do that math and they do make the decision. A long time ago, I was a blackjack dealer and they would come up behind us with a stopwatch and we had to shuffle 6 decks in 30 seconds and deal it out in I think it was 3.5 minutes or something like that. And anyway, as they're timing you, they're saying things like, do you want fries with that? Which is an old statement from McDonald's. It was part of a commercial and it took off. And basically the subtext of that was, you better pick it up because you're easy to fire and there's a line around the door of people who want your job. They knew that they had the upper hand and the power. And there are a lot of companies like that. And they do that calculus and they make that decision. I would encourage those companies from a management perspective to also pay attention to the turnover rate and the costs associated, start tracking how much it costs to train somebody before they're fully functional. Which means that you're looking at the fact that you have 2 people on a job for training, or you're looking at 2 people and their productivity and going, okay, neither of these people, the one who's new and the one who's existed for a while, neither of them are actually producing up to the normal levels because this person who knows what they're doing is having to come over and train this other person, but they're still doing their job. And so this person who's getting trained doesn't have everything. And so you have a cost associated with that. And I don't think that a lot of organizations are tracking that really directly.
You're completely right. And you said it so well that it's a cost you may be not tracking that are sneaking up on you.
Yeah.
And actually it could be more expensive.
We are very fortunate that basically the people who are hiring our services are organizations and leadership who want to create a better environment. They want to develop their people. It's not because they're hippies. They're not.
No,
I'm in
it's good
Texas,
for
people.
business.
These aren't hippies. Like, it's because the profits and the performance, they go hand in hand with having like a well cared for, well retained, and
Yeah.
you need people coming up behind you, so like you have some redundancy. So the problem with what we're talking about with the power dynamics is that basically, just like we were talking about with healthcare, where it's a system and you have to have external forces sort of impose some of the changes to happen, and that those external forces may be technological disruptions, or they may be political, or they may be government. I mean, there are a lot of external. Demographics is one that is disrupting everything. It's the same with like organizations, and the minimum wage, the 7.25 minimum wage, is a signal that as a society we're good with people not being able to afford their lives.
Yes. So that's what, if there's one thing, my life's work right now in our business is about addressing that affordability issue in healthcare, both from the perspective of the employee and of the business. And because right now, I do empathize with employers. Sometimes they're in an impossible situation. And
they're not the bad guys. I mean, we talked about some of the bad players, but I love business.
Yeah. And some of them just can't afford to be the employer they would like to be, or to be able to afford this or this wellness thing or that wellness thing or whatnot. But they would like to, and they would, if they could, they would.
And it's a question mark whether or not it ever should have been their responsibility in the first place. And I'm not saying that I have the solutions, and I'm not saying that government is the solution. I'm just saying there's a gigantic question mark about, I mean, like, again, it's weird. They're providing healthcare to employees so that when employees get fundamentally sick and their job might be difficult for them to maintain, that's exactly when they need. That is a weird setup.
It is. I've been studying it, though. It's, when you look at history, it's less weird.
Oh, that's good.
The first companies to do it were mining and railroad companies, where they were kind of like frontier town companies. And also those were kind of dangerous jobs, very physical jobs.
They were.
So, like the way you get, thinking back to recruitment and retention, the way that they'd had huge turnover. So the way you would get a worker out to like the middle of nowhere and doing something kind of dangerous, like building a mine or mining or railroad, was to have a hospital on site. That was.
We still see that in West Texas.
Yes. And actually,
because the oil industry is pretty.
Some of our most famous health systems in the country are legacies of those employers. And they were founded by, if you look back all the way, they have roots in a mining or railroad company that was their initial origin story. So, and then World War II, yes, that made it an accident. So that's the accidental moment. I take for granted how many people know this story, but just in case, like basically, World War II, the whole country had wage freezes implemented. And then the IRS ruled that, or Department of Labor, one of the two, said, hey, healthcare is a fringe benefit. It is not considered income. So now every company was like, to get around the wage freeze, they started offering healthcare.
I did not know that. I did not know that story.
Yeah. So, and then early 1950s, it got codified into law. But that's also where you had, Kaiser was a shipyard, and they offered health insurance to their employees. So same story. It's like all of these businesses that were kind of heavy industry, maybe a little dangerous. Like this is their way of. And then World War II was the kind of shock to the system that because of the wage freezes, then this became an attractive way to get around that law, and then it spread from there. So we've had the system for 80 years, and it's because of World War II. So
yeah, it's just like, these things don't grow overnight. Like there's a reason why we do the things. But at the same time, like maybe as a society, we need to think about whether we're still doing them in the best. Like it fit then. We're in a different environment today. Does it still fit? Let's ask that question. I don't have the answer, but it's rare that thing that worked in the 40s would still
here
work today.
It's so funny. I did a social media post, I think last week, where because when we say what I am fundamentally working for is the disintermediation of employer-sponsored healthcare, and where the worker, the employee, and their family have more voice at the table over how $1.6 trillion is spent every year on their behalf. So, and I would go so far as to say I'd love to see the end of employer-sponsored healthcare. But when we say that, it actually freaks a lot of people out. And I'm also I'm like, no, well, the system, some works for some. Like, I actually believe there's an opportunity for an evolution that is as powerful as like a full abolition of the system. And I said that on social media, and people who work for health insurance carriers were like, how dare you only call for an evolution? You should be calling for the end of the system. And I'm like, you are employed by the system. What is this? So even people working from within it are like, I'd love to see this end. And that is
really interesting. I would not have suspected that at all. But I mean, like, again, like, we don't really do that well with abrupt change. I mean, sometimes you can't help it. Like sometimes like AI comes in, like the technology comes in and it's a big disruption, but usually people want a slower rate of change. They're better with evolution and not revolution.